In Syria's war-scarred southwest, the rumble of tanks breaks the dawn. Israeli ground forces push into Quneitra, striking deep before vanishing into the haze. From the skies, jets pound southern targets. In Damascus, political fault lines widen, the government walking away from talks meant to stitch the nation back together. On two fronts, military and political, Syria stands on the brink once more. The Israeli forces have advanced into several towns and villages in Syria's strategic southwestern province of Quneitra, where they reportedly established checkpoints and searched residents. The state-run Syrian Arab news agency, SANA, reported that 10 Israeli military vehicles departed from the Tel Ammar base and proceeded towards the Barika-Kudna road, where soldiers established a checkpoint. In a separate operation, another convoy of 10 vehicles raided the village of Ruwahina, pushing deeper toward Razm al-Halabi in central Quneitra. The agency also reported that 5 Israeli military vehicles entered the southern town of al-Rafid from al-Hiran via the al-Asha crossing in the early hours of August 9th, advancing further towards the al-Jala crossing. Additionally, an Israeli patrol accompanied by 2 tanks was seen moving from al-Adnaniya towards Ruwahina, with the tanks taking positions on the village's outskirts. All Israeli forces later withdrew from the areas they had entered in both central and southern Quneitra. The Quneitra region holds a pivotal position, lying close to the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights, and has been a recurring flashpoint for tensions since the Yom Kippur War. Since the collapse of President Bashar al-Assad's government, Israel has repeatedly conducted airstrikes targeting Syrian military installations, weapons depots, and other strategic facilities. Damascus has accused Tel Aviv of taking advantage of Syria's political and security vacuum to seize territory. Actions, it says, violate the 1974 ceasefire agreement signed after the 1973 war. In June, Israeli fighter jets carried out airstrikes on targets in southern Syria in response to what the Israel Defense Forces, or the IDF, described as the launch of 2 projectiles into Israeli territory. According to the IDF, the projectiles landed in unpopulated areas. Later that day, the Israeli military confirmed it had also conducted artillery strikes against positions in southern Syria.
A short while ago, the IDF struck an armed vehicle carrying a heavy machine gun in the area of southern Syria.
The IDF further stated that
2 projectiles were identified crossing from Syria into Israeli territory and fell in open areas.
Following the incident, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz blamed Syria's transitional government, led by Ahmed al-Sharaa, for the attack. A move that further heightens the already fraught relations between the two sides. The United Nations also condemned the attack, warning that Israeli military activities breached the ceasefire and undermined the buffer zone established under the agreement to reduce hostilities between the two countries. At the same time, tensions within Syria's fragmented political landscape have deepened, with the country's new government announcing it will not take part in upcoming meetings in Paris with the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, or the SDF. The announcement casts serious doubt over an integration agreement signed earlier this year between the SDF and the interim government that took power following the overthrow of longtime President Bashar al-Assad in December. Quoting an unnamed government source, state-run news agency Sana reported that any future negotiations should be held in the Syrian capital, Damascus, describing it as the legitimate and national address for dialogue among Syrians. The SDF, a coalition that was the primary US-backed partner in the fight against Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant and ISIS in Syria, signed the March agreement with the new government to begin integrating into state institutions. The deal was touted as a landmark step towards stitching back together a country fractured by 14 years of civil conflict. Under the agreement, the Kurdish-led forces, which control around a quarter of Syrian territory, and the semi-autonomous Kurdish regional governing bodies were to begin a phased process of incorporation into Damascus's structures. However, key details, particularly concerning military integration, remain unresolved. The SDF has maintained that its fighters must join Syria's armed forces as a unified bloc. The government, by contrast, has insisted that they enlist individually, effectively dissolving the group's independent command structure. The dispute flared again this week, one day after the Kurdish administration hosted a landmark conference attended by representatives of several Syrian minority communities. It was the first such gathering since Assad's ouster. The conference's final statement called for
a democratic constitution that establishes a decentralized state and ensures participation by all components of Syrian society.
Sana's August 9th report accused the conference of undermining the March deal, stating that the discussions dealt a blow to the ongoing negotiation efforts aimed at implementing the integration framework. The agency quoted the unnamed official as saying the government would not take part in the Paris meetings and
will not sit at the negotiating table with any side seeking to revive the era of the deposed regime under any name or cover.
The fallout over the talks comes amid renewed tensions on the ground. Participants in the Kurdish-organised conference also criticised the government over its handling of sectarian clashes in the southern province of Quneitra and along Syria's Mediterranean coast. In their concluding remarks, they argued that
the current constitutional declaration does not meet the aspirations of the Syrian people. It should be reviewed to ensure a wider participatory process and a fair representation in the transitional period.
These grievances echo a broader concern that the transitional government has failed to fully embrace inclusivity in Syria's post-Assad political architecture. The SDF, for its part, accused government-backed factions on August 9th of launching more than 22 attacks on areas under its control in northeastern Syria over the past month. In a statement, the group said it had shown restraint in the face of these aggressions, but warned that the continuation of such attacks threatens mutual trust and undermines understandings reached earlier in the year. The breakdown in trust between the two sides now threatens to stall the fragile progress made towards a political settlement in Syria. For many observers, the standoff highlights the fragility of post-war reconciliation efforts in a country still reeling from over a decade of conflict, external interventions, and deep sectarian divisions.